Hey everybody, welcome back to Cool Stuff Etc. My name is Riley, and today we're talking more about Spooky Season Marathon. We're wrapping it up. October's officially done, and therefore the marathon is done. I have a confession to make, and that is that I did not fulfill my duties. I had one movie a day basically for all 31 days of October, and I made it probably till halfway through the final week, which for me, that is incredible. An incredible amount of determination on my part. I am going to praise myself very highly there, because whenever I set goals, this sounds really bad. Whenever I set goals for myself, I almost never follow through, especially if it's over a protracted period of time. So I am very proud of myself for even making it as far as I did. That being said, there were some movies that got left out in that last week. Of course, we still had the Halloween party, so those movies were watched and enjoyed. But yeah, probably 5 or 6 movies I think that we skipped out on, which isn't bad out of 31 days. So again, pat on the back to myself. But this video is to talk about the last 2 weeks that I did follow through on mostly. So let's get started. I won't waste any more time. Week 3 was foreign films, which was a variety of countries featured and also different styles of horror. So on October 15th, I watched Trouble Every Day. This is a film from France by the director Claire Denis. I have not seen any of her other movies. And this one was kind of a slow burn horror film. It's about a couple who are visiting France, and the husband has a secret motive, which is to try and find the cure for this cannibalistic desire that he has. And there's someone that he knows in the past who has that same cannibalistic desire. As I said, it's quite slow. And not in a way that I enjoyed particularly. It kind of didn't really have much tension aside from when, it was very effective when the movie would reach a climax and kind of explode. But the slower parts were not very effective for keeping my attention. And I think this movie is close to 2 hours long. Let me see. Yeah, 100 well, not 2 hours, but 100 minutes. Kind of a longer-ish movie for this kind of film, and it didn't fully, follow through. The soundtrack was great, and it was well directed. I'll say that much. But not entirely my thing. I was willing to give it a shot. As a side note, I don't know who on the production team allowed this to happen, but every piece of text in this movie is Comic Sans. And I'm not even a Comic Sans hater. I think Comic Sans is fine, but Comic Sans is not appropriate for your erotic horror film. I'll say that much. So that also kind of maybe soured my mood on it a little bit, but it was a well-made film. It just wasn't particularly for me. Next up, on October 16th, I watched The Wailing. This is a Korean, I would say more of a thriller. There's some horror elements, but it's a supernatural sort of mystery thriller. The director's name is Na Hong-jin, and I've not seen any of their other films. However, this movie is awesome. This is a great, great movie. And this, I would say, is kind of a slow burn too, but in a way that was more effective. I think what this movie had that maybe Trouble Every Day lacked was strong character work. Whereas Trouble Every Day had very little dialogue. They were obviously trying to establish a mood and an atmosphere through, a minimal approach to storytelling. This movie is more of a traditional story, and it's incredible. It's great. I really don't want to say anything about it because it will kind of ruin things, but I'll kind of just give the basic plot synopsis, which is a small town in Korea, in South Korea, I believe it's called Goksong, and what's happening is there's some sort of sickness or something going around that is causing people to murder their families. And so you're kind of, the main character is this police detective. He's kind of like, he's not really good at his job, but he's kind of working to solve this mystery, and it kind of goes from there. And there's a whole cast of characters that are introduced, and it's one of those movies that I think on a first watch you'll probably be confused, as I was, to what exactly is transpiring. It's not always explicit in who is doing what or what their motives are. But I think if you watch it twice, or if you were to go online and kind of read through some things about the movie, it makes sense. But there's a lot to dig into. A lot of biblical references, which is I don't know why, but I always seem to become attracted to like those sorts of movies with biblical references, probably due to my Catholic upbringing. So, yeah. And I thought the length would be an issue, but it actually wasn't at all. It was great. It was really great. It worked wonderfully. I did have to break up the watch into 2 parts, but other than that, it was very, very cool. All right, next up, on October 17th, I watched Noroi: The Curse. This is directed by Koji Shiraishi. And it is a found footage film. And it's about a documentary filmmaker who is investigating this string of weird incidents, like a young girl is kidnapped and she has psychic abilities, and the form that it takes is very, very convincing. It really feels like a documentary. The acting is super believable. Even the guy who's like covered in tinfoil from head to toe, it is a little over the top, I'll admit, but it is still believable. And it has that film grain because they're shooting on video. And yeah, I don't know. This is another one that I kind of don't want to say anything. I don't want to like spoil any big moments or anything like that, but this is a good one. I enjoyed myself. There are some lulls for sure, but when it's interesting, it is very, very engaging. So I can't wait with a positive attitude about it. One observation I made about it was that it's sort of like it is Blair Witch-esque in the sense that it's found footage, but it has more of a structure, more of a plot. But I would say it still doesn't exactly adhere to like a 3-act structure type deal. It's kind of just like they're going from one location to another, trying to uncover these mysteries and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it is very, very cool. For the way they present it alone, it's worth a watch, I would say. All right, October 18th, the original Suspiria. This is an Argento film. I've seen one other Argento film, which is Deep Red. No, I'm sorry, 2. Deep Red and Tenebrae. I don't know pronounce that one. And I like those movies a lot. I actually like Suspiria less. It was still good, don't get me wrong. It's a classic, of course. But there are certain things about it that I don't know. I didn't vibe with it totally. I of course, I still think it's good. I think 2 of my main issues were issues that I've had with his other works as well. One, which is like the overdubbed audio is like so distracting for me. And it just does not work to like build an atmosphere or build a mood. It kind of like takes me out of it a lot of the time, and it's which is frustrating because a lot of what's going on is really interesting, but when the acting is like not well done and the audio is not mixed very well, it's just it's kind of a big issue to like a big impediment to my enjoyment. And then the other big issue I had was the score, which is of course awesome. However, they use it very inappropriately sometimes, and it's often very loud in the mix. But there's instances where a movie using its score very loudly, is a genuine like tool or genuine intention, like there's something behind it. But this just seemed kind of sloppy. It didn't seem like they were going for anything. It seemed like they didn't know what they were doing, to be quite honest, because it was just so overwhelming in moments where it didn't need to be. It kind of just like, again, kind of took me out of it and drove me a little mad. So it's not the best. But it is good. It's worth a watch if you're into like weird supernatural horror films. The next day, on the 19th, I watched City of the Living Dead. This is the Lucio Fulci movie. This is my first Lucio Fulci movie, and this was more of the Italian horror that I'm kind of into. It still does have that like weird overdubbed audio. I think this is like a common thing with Italian films. But it wasn't as bad to me. It also wasn't as noticeable. Maybe I'm just misremembering it. It was kind of a long time ago. It wasn't. I would say it wasn't a particularly good movie, but the movie watching experience was very enjoyable. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on, a lot of cool filmmaking stuff. The plot and characters are like kind of tossed to the wayside. It is not, they are not the prime focus here at all. It is strictly a movie for movie lovers that really pay attention to like stupid shit that most people don't care about. Which is fine. That's me. I care about stupid shit. So I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to watching more Fulci movies. I did have another one on the list, Zombie. Technically, I think it's Zombie 2, but it's called Zombie in America. But I know it's silly. But yeah, I had that on the list. It was not watched, but it is on my list to watch soon. So I will hopefully do that. October 20th. I watched Ringu Zero. This is the prequel to Ringu. I kind of had like a middle of the road kind of opinion. It seemed unnecessary. I'll say that much. It's kind of cool to see the precursor to the first movie and kind of see where Sadako kind of came from in a sense. But at the same time, it is a little unnecessary. It does kind of like destroy the mystery element that the first movie had, just a little bit. But worst of all, it's just not that engaging of a movie. It was a very interesting choice to set it in an acting troupe. So I commend them for kind of taking that step. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know, not much here. The first two Ringus are quite good, but this one was not really my thing. So, and then the next day, the 21st, to round out Foreign Film Week, I watched Dark Water, directed by Hideo Nakata, who is the director of the first Ringu. And this kind of fell into the same boat as actually kind of a lot of the ones that I had watched this week, which is that it's kind of very tedious. It's slow moving. There isn't a lot really to be engaged on. I think this movie, more than the others, had a really cool like allegory or maybe metaphor is a better word. Had a cool metaphorical take on parenting and childhood trauma and that sort of thing. But this is speaking as someone in 2022 as opposed to 2002, but that's kind of been done to death for me. So it's just not something I am going to actively seek out anymore. But it's still a rather good film. And it's definitely still better than the American remake. That much I know. I have not even seen it, but I know that much. So, it was all right. All right, to begin the final week, which was movies that I had either been meaning to watch for a really long time, or movies that I had started and not finished. So I'll tell you which is which for each. But on October 22nd, the first movie of that week, I watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Philip Kaufman. And yeah, this is pretty great. It starts and it kind of just gets going pretty quick. It doesn't take a long time to like get you into everything, which I thought was really cool. And there's just a lot of really neat stuff going on, a lot of cool visuals. The acting is really, really good. Donald Sutherland is great. Jeff Goldblum's in this movie, and he's Jeff Goldblum. But there's a lot to like, and it kind of just has that 70s horror movie touch to it that I really enjoy. If I had to say anything negatively about it, is that the last maybe half hour, there's some points that drag a little bit, like when they're escaping from the aliens. But what I will say is that the feeling of isolation and like paranoia about like who you can trust was very palpable and very, very well done. So I commend the movie for that, and it's another really good movie. I'm glad that I was able to see it after having it been on my list for such a long time. So the 23rd of October, I watched May directed by Lucky McKee. This is starring Angela Bettis as the titular character, and it's about a girl who, because of childhood trauma, is socially awkward and kind of alone, very lonely, and she hyperfixates on this guy, and it kind of just goes from there, and things get pretty crazy. I really, really, really like this movie. The acting is great, especially Angela Bettis. She's so believable as May, and she just like really brings home an incredible performance. And the story really takes its time at the beginning. It's never boring, but it really takes its time to get going. And I would say it's kind of like maybe around the hour-ish mark is when things really start to kick off and get like pretty violent and pretty crazy. But yeah, this is a movie that I have had on my list for a while. I would have watched it sooner, but I had never had a way to watch it other than, of course, like buy it on Amazon or something. But it wasn't at the top of my list. But now it was on. They added it to Shudder, and I threw it on the list, and I was really, really excited. And I'm glad that I kept it in my mind because, man, that was a great movie. And then finally, the last movie of that week that I watched was Nightbreed by Clive Barker. I realize I am slowly moving this camera because I'm knocking the table. Nightbreed by Clive Barker. This is a pretty weird movie. I did watch the director's cut, which is on Shudder. And it's about this underground society of monsters, and they're in hiding from the world above, who would only seek to destroy them. And this guy is being manipulated by his psychiatrist, who is secretly a serial killer and who is framing him for the murders, gets him killed, and he ingratiates himself into this monster society and kind of becomes part of this like weird prophecy. It's very strange, like Clive Barker thing. I'm still moving this over. It's very weird Clive Barker stuff. If you've seen Clive Barker's movies or read his books, you are probably familiar with weird stuff. And this was pretty good. I didn't love it, but I will say the last 40 minutes when they're like fighting with the police and kind of like massacring them was very, very engaging. There was a lot of cool stunts, a lot of cool moments. So if anything, that last 40 minutes is worth a watch. And of course, it is cool to see David Cronenberg as an actor as opposed to behind the camera. And he does a great job, I think. It's an 80s horror film, I would say. Although it was apparently released in 1990, but it has that 80s feel for sure. Yeah. So that is all of the films I watched the last 2 weeks, excluding the Halloween Party, but I don't feel the need to talk about those ones. Those are all movies that are pretty well known, pretty well liked, and but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. One last thing I'll say about this is that even though it was somewhat of a failure, I do plan to try and do this again next year. Oh, excuse me. With hopefully a bit more success. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.